trouble, thank you. Jesus. Okay. I didn't want to. Oh, anybody got the Eagles? Can't stand Steelers though. I got the girls get my phone down to there. And just singing from Shay.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the November 9th Brook Township Supervisors meeting.
Please rise. Give me call.
We'll start with some announcements. In accordance with Resolution 2-2012, Scott Stilson, Vincent Drive is recording tonight's meeting for posting on YouTube. And this meeting is also going to be available and being recorded electronically on the Zoom platform. The next announcement is that the Board of Supervisors held an executive session on Monday, October 24th at 5 p.m. to discuss personnel matters. We'll move on to the open forum on action items. So this would be any item on the agenda. If anybody would like to make any comments.
For those following along, those would be all the items under section G.
Under new business, is that? Yes.
Yes. Anybody else want to know?
It's this Paul Jansen who will be presenting the budget. No one else is
So,
on Zoom.
there being no comments, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I have a point of order. Under item 1, there is a correction to the October 5th budget workshop. Beth Cole was listed as being present for that, and she is not. So that is a correction to that particular set of minutes, and that's the only note I have.
Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 14 with the correction noted, number 1?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we'll move to department reports. Don Johnson, Public Works Director.
That would be Christie, as his report.
Yes, thank you. Don reported that the roads crew has been cutting trees that have posed a hazard of falling onto township roads, primarily ash trees that had died as a result of our invasive pest, the emerald ash borer. 120 tons of salt has been stocked up in the last month in preparation for winter, which is rapidly approaching. New tires have been installed on the loader, and the old ones will be advertised for sale on municipal bid, and that is all that Don has to report.
Thank you. Next, Christie, if you're ready.
Thank you. I attended the Western Chester County Chamber of Commerce Municipal Update Luncheon last Friday and represented the township to let the 200-plus members that were in attendance know what was going on in the township. So I let them know about the current amount of acres preserved through land preservation, which is in excess of 4,400 acres, which equals 27.6% of the total land and 38% of farmland in the township. I also shared the current list of subdivision and land development projects from review all the way through current construction. and how the township allocated its ARPA funds. The Honeybrook Food Pantry needs a volunteer who has availability during daytime hours to pick up food donations from various businesses in the township. The current person is experiencing some health issues, and so they need a new volunteer for that position. Contact the pantry at 610-273-6102 if you are interested. Supervisors, before you, you have a list of subdivision and land development projects. This was the list I shared with the chamber, but also represents a feature that we used to have on our website before the WordPress update of 2020. And residents have been asking for a list of current projects. And so, with your permission, I would like to start posting this again on the website. So you may peruse that at your leisure. The Honeybrook Community Partnership met yesterday afternoon. Deck the Brook will be happening once again this year towards the end of this month and into December. And Christmas in Honeybrook will be on Friday, December 9th from noon until the evening hours with a variety of special activities throughout the township and borough businesses, organized by Rosie at Steeple the People. Watch the Tri-County Record for details on both these events. Please note that the partnership website is being rebuilt. Their Facebook page is still up and running, but their website is a little wonky right now. The next partnership meeting will be December 13th, beginning at 4:30 at the Suburban Tap Room. And it will be a brief business meeting followed by a mixer, so anybody is welcome to join in, but please RSVP to Corey Ross at Suburban. And if you've visited our homepage of our website lately, you will notice there's a new feature. There is now the meetings portal button. It is live. It has been added to the homepage, and it takes folks right to the iCompass site for meetings, where they can view meeting agendas and minutes, and the items normally printed out for the public will now be available online in one location. Those interested in receiving notification of when the posting of agendas takes place can subscribe to notifications. And the site can be accessed at honeybrook.twp.civicweb.net/portal, or just click on the button. It's easy as that. Lastly, the township offices will be closed on Friday, November 11th in observance of Veterans Day, and on Thursday, November 24th in observance of Thanksgiving Day. And that's all I have.
You also have the veteran ceremony?
Yes, I figured you would want to announce that at the,
Okay.
Yeah. The Veterans Ceremony will be at Tell High, 2 p.m. on Sunday the 13th at the Stonecroft Commons Performing Center for the Arts, correct?
That's what they call it.
Yeah. 4,000 tree line drive.
All right, thank you. Next, warrant events and township manager.
Just ask that you accept my written report, and if any of the board has questions, I'd be happy to answer it, but it should be attached to your
Thank you. Land Preservation Committee.
I'll see you at the last meeting, they didn't have any applications to consider. John Goodall and Jeff were not present, so they were looking for a discussion with the board on some direction for 2023. One of the things would be, rather than, I discussed with Chip Jones, one of the members, left a message with Shane, to rather than have the meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning before the breakfast meeting, that we have a full meeting in the evening. We'll have to get the approval of Shane and the other members as well. Some of the things I wanted to discuss, whether the land preservation money would be used for parks. If that's the case, if it's 20% or whatever, we got to give some direction on that. and going forward, what plans we have for land preservation. So we just got to run with them. That's in essence what that was all about.
Next is Planning Commission.
Quick report from planning. We do have our monthly meeting tomorrow night. It's being moved up to Thursdays because of Thanksgiving holiday, so it'll be tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Two items on the agenda. One would be the Dollar General sketch plan, which is on the the eastern side of the township along Route 322, and also the DR Work Plan, Arbor's Glen subdivision, it's called now, will be in for review from the zoning perspective. There was a zoning review letter that was issued for that. Due to the size of the submission, we're deferring the subdivision and stormwater review until the December meeting, which was agreeable to the applicant. So that'll be the agenda for tomorrow night. Melissa, did you have anything to add as the only planning commission member here, I believe? Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. And lastly, Recreation and Parks Board.
There was not a quorum at the October meeting, so the board had originally decided they would not meet in November, but they are going to now because they didn't have a quorum to proceed on any business. So all of the October agenda items will move to the November meeting, which is, hold on. It'll be the third Thursday of
November
November,
17th.
the 17th. Like,
November 17th.
I put everything except the date.
It's on.
So,
I
17th.
cheated.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to new business. First item is list of bills for payment as prepared by the treasurer for October 2022.
Oh, yes, I'll make a motion.
I'll second. All in favor? The next item is the budget presentation by Paul Mason, consultant and Peter Barz.
Peter's not here, so go with Paul. Paul's on Zoom. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening. I thought I was at township meeting, but given the vacant seats in the front, it seems like I'm in church.
They're all a couple rows back, Paul.
There you go.
There's 14 people out there, you're talking to somebody.
Okay. So let's go back and review. You may recall that early in the process, we looked at your last 4 years' budgets, and you distributed this account, this report. And basically what it did was it looked at your 19 to 21 year budgets, and then we also did a deep dive into 22, and then set some preliminary numbers for 2023. I think we reviewed this back in September. It's basically just a placeholder review. So you could review what you were looking at and ask any questions you had. Warren and I have had a number of meetings since then in developing the next budget. I don't think anybody has questioned any of this that we have here. So this is the background to develop what we are working on now. And so I'll pull that up. So that background took us up until 22, the deep dive, and then we made some projections for 23. So now what you're looking at is a budget that carries your township operation all the way out to 2027. This is a critical process in that you get a look into the future and you get to kind of look and see what is going to happen, not only in your general fund, but in all of your dollars, all of your funds you have. The other thing that it does is it allows you to look at how are you preparing for the future? What are you doing in today's budget that's going to allow you to assimilate the costs that are coming forward? So one of the things that I always do when I do this budget is similar to the retro 3-year budget you had. I would show where your assets are. I don't, it's not an effective thing to look at your budget and say, okay, we're getting this much money in, we're spending this much more money, and that's where you don't see what it does to your fund balance. So you can see here that your expenses in budget expenses for 2022 were $2,527,000, but you actually only spent $1,900,000. And the reason for that is that you had a number of ARPA projects that are getting pushed forward. So your expenses are staying up for this year. And you can see once you stop your ARPA projects, your projected expense budget come back in line again. So it's just a matter of you were going to spend money here, you did spend it, now to be spent next year. So you see your fund balance was projected, budgeted $3,200,000. It's actually going to go up $3,900,000. And at the end of 2023, it'll be $3,700,000. So you follow these fund balances forward. But again, very healthy financial picture for the township, especially the general fund. Most bureau funds keep that. So the one thing I want to caution you on is that when we do this work, we really try to be very conservative with the revenues. And God knows if this inflation that we're looking at now, and interest rates are going to shut down projects that you have. But you'll see that we are being very conservative and we're projecting the impact that they're going to have. But the reality of it is, most of your houses are selling for $300,000, $350,000, maybe even more. And so your household income there, your annual property tax is going to be multiple $100s for each of those houses. And your EIT, or income tax you have, you could probably base on $150,000 household income, maybe $200,000. So that's all going to be new revenue on top of what we anticipate inflation is going to do. So when you see your income tax estimates, you may say, well, they should be higher. And we're trying to be very conservative. And I hope that they come in much higher. I hope the tax will become much higher, because that just puts you in a better financial context. On the expense side, you'll see that we have repeatedly put in escalators. The escalators for things like your salaries, the escalators for things like your insurance, your health care. Because it doesn't really do good to do a 5-year budget if you're going to escalate revenues and not escalate the expenses that typically won't go into that. So you'll see that's built into the process. And then if you look at your real estate tax, you can see that you had a budget of $248,000, but projecting you at $207,000. Again, this is a very conservative number, $275,000. It's probably going to be closer to $290,000. I'd rather you be conservative and be able to adjust up than be under and then have to really work on where your money's coming. But you can see that for estimating your real estate tax by 3% every year, that's solely based on new development. That is not based on assessment. Don't increase your tax base. It's just new assessed properties. So we have a 3% escalator there. My sense is, based on your development, if it doesn't slow down, you'll see a slowdown in that growth starting in 27 and 28. That's why that's the last year that we have a 3% growth. So what you see here is we looked at every single year, at every single account, we projected where we thought the year end was going to be, and then we assigned the budget for 2023 to that number. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay.
Checking the column, T or projected. So I'm just looking at the budget here. Those last two items, actual expenses and the balance deficit, those numbers are slightly off from what we projected here.
When you say numbers are slightly off,
Yeah, I've got 1842 and 40, 48, instead of 390.
Oh, from the numbers I printed out to the ones that you're showing.
this was a final, review that I did with the board. There were a couple of questions that your accountant or your treasurer raised. And so I made some adjustments based on what his thoughts were. I'll transfer this document to you so you have, it's not online, but I'll transfer this document to you. That's the other thing too. I want to make sure we're clear about that. This is a preliminary budget. You can change anything in this budget until the night that you adopt. The moment you adopt it, it's your budget. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna do a summary of this for Warren, that he can advertise before, 30 days before you adopt. And then you can do anything you want with your money. You can raise money, lower money, change money, it's up to you. But this starts the process you have to have in order to actually adopt your final budget. So don't pick these numbers. I don't know if in the past you had your manager presented, that's the numbers, that's not what this is. This is fully in play for you to adjust, to make any assumptions you have. So if you see things that you think need to be adjusted, you can. I did put in placeholders for salary. So that's just an area where you, before you get to the end of this, you want to set those numbers correctly. We're trying to present this so that all of your salaries are listed individually or collectively. So as your department heads, they're listed individually, and for your staff, they're listed collectively. But they're all listed in place where you're going to be paying them, as opposed to having separate funds, putting money in there. If you want to do that, you can generate a cost allocation plan that would list all your salaries and exactly where money is coming from. But you'll know exactly what you have and where it's coming from. Okay. Transfer tax. This is your first really, I think, going to be a serious conservative number. Because a $350,000 house in your township is going to give you $3,500. And given what Warren has been advised by your developers as to what they expect to build and sell, this should be a fairly conservative number. So only have to be very concerned if development slows down, just your normal housing transfers will probably support 2/3 of this. But we'll look at this. One of the things that you do, that I recommend you do, is you open this back up in June. I don't think it's any good to look at it in February, March, April, May. At the end of June, we've got 6 months of performance, you can open this back up and look at it and say, okay, our transfer tax is at $110,000. And that represents very little money in February, March, and April, because you don't usually get a lot of transfers because they're in the process of completing sales. But your sales take off in May, June, July, August, and September. So you look at this and you go, oh, wow, we're at $110,000. We're probably going to hit $200 easily. So you may want to adjust your budget. You may want to just leave it where it is. You don't need to show extra revenue. And it's moved into your fund balance at the end of the year. This is another number that I think is really conservative. We're projecting $1,050,000. Just general inflation should push your overall EIT into the $1,200,000 range. But then you're going to have all these new people coming in that are going to be paying that earned income tax account on their gross money that they make because the residence is in your township. So again, really, you can see how this is just going to grow as you're going through development, and it's a positive thing for township. This becomes one of those. This is a collection of a bunch of very small accounts. Certainly look at them, but when you're talking about, I think, 8 accounts here that add up to $50,000, and 45,000 of these are cable franchise contract, or your cable franchise agreement. That's not a lot of money in any of those accounts. I would caution the board that I anticipate that you're going to see these numbers grow as you go forward in your cable franchise, because I think that more and more people are going to justify the Wi-Fi accessibility that I pay for YouTube, which doesn't utilize your franchise fee. So you're going to see revenues begin to drop from your Comcast contract. You can watch it. And I don't ever see it getting much below $30,000. You'll see it's going to start affecting your budget probably within a year and certainly within 2 or 3 years. Okay, fines and enforcements. This was a $7,000 budget. We got 12. We're being consistent again by putting conservative again by putting in $10,000. And here's your minimum number right here. This is the other side of inflation. Warren started moving money, and then got a call from Fulton, and now he's got Fulton online. And these are conservative interest numbers. But keep in mind, this is free money. This is you just taking the money that's available in your general fund and investing investing it in much better interest rates than we have seen in this country in years. And so, Warren's looking at 4.5%, 5% for some investment. And when you're looking at a fund balance of multiple $1 million, you can tie that money up for a good period of time. And I recommend that you do. But when you're looking at $2,000 in a budget, and projecting you're at 15, and then a budget of 70, 91, 72, and these numbers may go up, if you go down, I don't know. You keep looking at the fund balance and you estimate your interest. But this is free money. Your residents are not paying these tax dollars. This is extra money.
And just a moment on that. So for the benefit of residents, that is at a fixed rate for a fixed period of investments.
Correct, so we look at unallocated funds, which means funds that aren't allocated to a specific line item. And then depending on when we believe we're gonna use those funds, we can invest in turn. For anywhere from 60 days, and on the long end, we can't go anything more than 1 year. So if we know that we have, for example, a land pres about $4 million, and in any 1 year we don't do any more than 400,000, we know that we can split up that $3 million into quarterly investments year out, so we're earning 5%. So when we invest about $1 million, we have a payout structure that we know at 365 days we get $55,000. It's already allocated.
So you're locked into that rate?
So the interesting thing about this is that, now, if, let's just say we follow what Warren just said, and you have $3 million in reserves, you commit $2 million into long-term investments. Well, that $1 million that's sitting there, that was drawing 0.1% interest, is now drawing 2.5% interest. So, $1 million drawing 2.5% interest is $25,000. And that's not tax dollars, that's money that is just being put to work, and it's just additional money for the township to build into the budget, and either you do additional services with it, or you work how you're going to modernize your equipment, whatever, but it's just free money, because it's just off of your investment.
Just an observation on that. For debt service, the projection on this building, I think here puts us out to about 2035. Yeah. Could potentially extend that down.
Correct, and they just reset the debt a few years ago, having lowered the debt ratio, so it didn't increase our longevity for the bonds, but we do pay less. And again, that's something that Paul and I are working out to get on those numbers, and we're going to take a look at that, and we'll see that built out through 2027. So as you said, John, you can decide what you want to do with that free interest money. If we want to pay down the bond, or do we want to offer it to fire and EMS, or again provide some more services.
Well, these are your standard state aids. I don't know if you know what these are. Nobody explain what these are. Do you all understand what they are? It's money in, money out. That's every one of these. Well, liquor license is money in, and it's limited. PERDA is your money you get for utilities that are tax-free, basically PUC governed, and they make a very small payment to assist you in offsetting what you should have from property tax program. War and fire, this is a money in, money out. So later on, you're going to see that we're going to distribute this money to the fire company. This could be $2,000. As long as your expense is $2,000, you get 43 grade. We try to be accurate with it, but nobody ever knows what the state is going to do. This account jumps all over the place. But it's the tax on insurance companies that sell fire insurance in the Commonwealth that are not headquartered in the Commonwealth. So they tax them separately than they do from insurance companies that are headquartered here. And that money goes to the fire companies, so they use it for fire safety equipment and for life safety equipment. It could be insurance, it could be augmenting extra health care to help them. It has to be associated with life care. It can't be the fire.
Okay, so here are your charges for services. So this
when a landlord submits an application comes in, that's the cost you charge for it. Keeping that very low, you get a lot, that's fine. This is money in, money out. So if you get an engineer or legal bill, you get reimbursed. It's just trying to reflect where we think that number is gonna be. You had budgeted 42, it's in at 60, so we kept the 60 going forward, at least through the period of time you're in the development process. So engineering work fees, this is the money that, you budget that comes in with your application. Again, it's a placeholder revenue source. If you don't get the applications, you probably not gonna have the expenses. That's pretty good. The big issue you have here is you get a commercial application, which pays, I don't know what your commercial fee is, around $1,500, $1,000. Maybe it costs you $30,000 to fight it, versus, typical residential applications are $1,000, whenever right around $1,000. And you add in the legal fees and transcription, the limited for it. And here's your Sunshine Act numbers, again, conservative, that's what you get when you reproduce records for your residents or anybody who's asking for it. This is all those accounts that we think is pretty conservative, although you did budget 95 and we're projecting 60 this year. This is, we're looking at it coming in heavy for the next 3 years, but letting it up until you get out to 27. And then 28, 29 probably should be much more reduced, so as you get more land occurring, then you're anticipating it being done. And we're just tracking back, we think permit fees are going to be use and occupancy inspections. These are just all permits that we have. Questions about that? Okay. Solid waste fees, this is, I'm sure this is a hindrance for some of your residents, but it's also free money for your other residents for having a landfill partially in your municipality. But that has an escalator fee in it. We estimate 5%, I guess, for foreign content. So we have that in there, and they just got a big extension of their station, their landfills, therefore, pile longer, so that's good. We don't have any park and recreation fees in there, so that was zero out this year. We're not projecting any. That's something we change. It's something we want to do. That's where we are. Fire hydrant rentals. This is, you pay a fee to have your fire hydrant break. These are the fire hydrants that are in private subdivision that the homeowners association pays because they handle their water operations. Every year you have to flush your hydrants at least once a year. The current practice is do it twice a year. This is the money that is paid to reimburse you for the expenses that you've already paid to flush them and then pay you back. I know this is the infamous, just this instrument comes in that you can't classify your budget for the rest lands. And so it's a conservative number, you get $2,200 this year, conservatively $1,000 a year. You have a contribution in lieu of taxes, $20,500. I don't know if that has a calendar on it, or if this is telehead basis, is that correct?
That is correct.
So I don't know if they have a calendar that is a sunshine on it, or they just agree that's what we're going to pay every year. That's a contribution they make in lieu of the fact they don't pay taxes. Private property taxes will be a lot higher. This is kind of like a permanent tax. Okay, so now total revenue budgeted at $2,300,000, actually $2,004,000. And so we're budgeting 22 and 23, then 24, then 24, then 25 as we go forward. This is just your total number. And when you go all the way up to the top, you just pull that up and it comes into this revenue account right here. So we add that to your fund balance, and this is your total asset. This is what you have in your general fund at the beginning of the year, based on the projection of your revenues, plus what's in your account at the beginning of the year. So now we go down to expenses. And the expenses begin, the general government. This is your allocation as elected supervisors and your taxes for your income. I've done many analysis of this. It
works out to like 10 cents an hour, based on how much time we spend every single day working on township business. So while it looks like each of you gets $2,500, when you extrapolate that over the year, it might be some nice vacation income, but it does work out to an hourly rate. And certainly you don't get minimum wage, that's for sure. So, having said that, like we said, we're going to be able to analyze where your salaries are and then put in how that gets arrived at. And so this is your finance treasurer and your finance person. And so the budget is 65, it's coming in at 66.5. We're budgeting 72, then 75, and 79 moving forward, recognizing that these rates are probably going to change, but we're also building a building for it. Remember, we're shifting to the other side now. Now we're on expenses, so we're providing for a good allocation that can be modified as you go forward. So you can be more conservative if the costs actually come in more conservative. So this year you budgeted 9,500 for audit, you actually came in at 94. We're saying 10 for next year. That very well could be 94.50. We don't know. But you can see that we're allocating 10% more each year. And again, when you get to 2024, you can look at that and go, oh, we have a contract for 10.5. We just come in here and we just change to that. Really kind of easy. You just change it to 10.5, and then you let spread beyond that, and then that spreads down into each of your additions. You have a treasurer's bond, which is $2,100. That's probably going to be pretty consistent because of the personnel that are in there. Bond is based on person's their credit rating. So if you've got somebody who has a very strong personal credit rating, your bond is going to go down. If you have somebody with a very bad credit rating, bond is going to be higher.
To just comment on what the township supervisors are paid, that we take from the second-class township code. And
You cannot be paid anywhere the township code says you can pay less.
So that's
Nearly enough.
Yeah.
It's just,
Those numbers haven't been looked at in years.
it's unfortunate. And even more important too, like Laura just got elected, if you change the rate of pay for your supervisor, she has to wait till she runs for re-election in order to get that change in pay.
That happened to me with the, I was at the low rate coming in, and I had to wait till it got reelected to get the new rate.
A little bit. So this is your tax collection, and we don't anticipate that's going to change. It's basically what you're, and it can't change with, it's the same thing for the tax collector. You have to change their compensation before they get reelected. You set it, and then that is the way it is for the 4 years that they serve as tax collector. So that's why we kept it at 15,000 going across it. General legal expense, I don't know. I would expect that your general legal is going to be very, very flat because you've got now a professional manager who's taking care of your day-to-day operations. And, you can consult with your solicitor, but I think you probably agree that that's a pretty good indicator. You're 58 now, you put 60. You can look at it next year, maybe you put 52 in for 2024. I don't know, but I think that's a pretty good indicator where you are.
And that's different from, we also have a solicitor for the zoning hearing board, so that would be a different line item for that.
Special legal right here.
Yeah.
There's a zoning hearing board solicitor section, though.
Yes.
Well, that's if you have special legal issues, you can retain a special counsel. Okay. So now you have your administrative staff, and this is one of those collective amounts where we add up their salaries and we put it in cost allocators. You can see that we have a 5% raise. These are just space savers. So you set whatever percentage you think it should be, and whatever rate you think it should be, and then we just change these numbers accordingly. But again, like the key cost escalators in there, so that you're not looking at a salary of 92,000 next year, and then thinking that in 2027 your salary is going to be 93,000. There you've got 4 years where it's going to be impacting the operating budget. Not a lot, but it's still going to be, we're looking at $14,000. We assume 93,000 could have. So these percentages can change. You can knock it down to 2%, knock them up to 10%, whatever you want to do. That's how you do it, and you have it works. And then there's a performance review for administration cost for that, and that's involved there so that you can, if you want to allocate the performance bonuses, you have money there to do. Payroll taxes, that's a percentage of your overall payroll for those employees. Workers are unemployment, same thing, be cost allocated there. Workers' comp, same thing, cost allocated. So you have a real understanding where it is. Your health insurance, this is reflecting the members of your staff that have health insurance. This number can change, you want to sit on this number, because let's say you have a full-time person you hire, and they have a very benefit, right, family benefit. That's a $25,000 assessment. So you want to be able to come in here and get the 23.1. So let's say your family benefit is 26,000. So this should go to 29.1. So you put 29.1 in here, and now look what happens down the road. 32, 35, 38. So it really escalates. So this is a great tool. You really can see what is going to how it's going to impact your actual benefit costs when you hire someone.
And there's a township in Brook County that has a police department. They pay their cops $80,000 as a base patrol. And when they did their analysis, their cost allocation analysis for all the benefits they pay, they were paying an extra $140,000 in benefits. So when I sat there and they said, oh, let's just hire another cop at $80,000. Oh no, you need to budget 220, escalating at a fairly decent rate because of those benefits going up. And it was idle for them to understand that.
So, pension, food costs, so this is reflecting additional costs for your employees and the amount of money you're putting into their actual pensions. I think a lot of this has to do with your township manager and an appropriate contribution for his retirement. And then you've got your disability life insurance. And then this is a placeholder. This is your township manager's salary. And we went through this process together last year when you hired Warren, and we had a lot of issues with where your salary was and very few candidates. And you get a gold line with Warren, but I want to make sure that at least you have built into your budget a process which you can see will allow you to be competitive in Chester County if in fact you have a situation you have to replace your manager. Better to know what that cost should be and where it is versus then you lose your manager, whether he has a career-ending accident or something, and then you have to sit there and go, really, what can we afford? And part of our discussions with the hiring board was what could we afford, because you have to look in the future. Let's give you a look in the future. I think it's your manager in a competitive salary basis. What you do with Warren is another story, but it's important that you can see that this number, how it impacts your bottom line, and can you actually afford to do that? And when you're looking at a manager who, let's say you decide you're going to pay Warren $90,000 next year, and then he is aggressively out there investing their money and getting in $75,000, well, that's a great investment in your manager. And I can tell you there are managers across the region right now who are just asleep at the wheel and aren't dealing with the fact that interest rates are going up from 0.5% to 5.5%. They need to get aggressive about that, but it's a lot of work to do it. And give Warren credit. He jumped right into it and did it. And you all a lot of credit for allowing him to, because it's making it a lot easier for us to make that issue.
Do you have a question on the pension? Is there a vesting schedule on this, or is this earned each year? And
This is your cost. Vesting would be different.
yeah, I understand that, but the question is, do they have a vesting schedule? Is there like a 5-year vesting schedule?
The policy manual shows a 5-year vesting.
Okay, so now we're into the general government administration, and this is just the general support for your operation. And so, we looked at where your budgets were. We believe that you ought to be investing more in your employees in meetings and conferences and continuing education. Office supplies are consistent, your other charges and services, Warren can go over those with me, but 18,000 is a good number to budget for that. You have a payroll service, so that's built into the budget, and you also have communications expense, and Warren invested in that this year, so now your future costs are going down. And that's a very positive development.
So, cost for the iPads and all that, what about them?
So those were out of a capital fund. So that communication expense was moving from landlines to moving to the Zoom voice over internet protocol. So it spiked from 53 to 7 because we had to purchase the Zoom phones this year, even though, and the services, even though we're already kind of halfway through Verizon. So, you pay for a year in advance, so we started mid-year with Zoom, so that's why next year the cost drops to 37 from the 53 that we're at. So
So
that
you can make a return to go from 53 to 7, so you're spending $1,700, and then you're immediately saving $1,600 for every year thereafter.
So that includes the Zoom phones, the Zoom meeting, the Zoom room, digitally that will Zoom meetings anywhere. So that's all.
So vehicle expense is recognizing the additional cost you have in administration vehicles. You have your advertising expense. You're at 3,000 this year. Because we want to make sure we build in the ability for you to do the advertising you need to do, we put it at 4,500. And you've had years in the past where it's been more than 4,500. We saw that in the 3-year budget. But we think 4,500 is a good number to put here. Dues and subscriptions, you're at 6, but now you have a manager, and he's getting involved in organizations that he should be involved in as a professional manager. And so that account has gone to $8,000. We'll monitor that as we go forward also. And then this was an account that your treasurer asked about. And I think this is the contribution to the food bank. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. That's going to be for the food bank.
This is part of your ARP increased funding. So you had budgeted 28 last year, you put 28 in, you're budgeting 44 this year and 44 next year, and then it drops down to 3,500 because of the food bank contribution. Again, as a result of a commitment you made from ARP. Congratulations on that. So your computer services, budgeted 11, went up to 12, we now have it at 18,000, and we're putting in an escalator on that so that you can stay current on services. And then next year, Warren has a website design contract that went through, and then that goes down into a second phase with additional costs, and then after that, it's maintenance of the website. And then you have your IT networking, and that whole budget goes from 11 budgeted to 12, then up to 18, and then 19, 21, and so on. But in the end, you're going to end up with a good website, a current way to reach out to your residents. And that's a very forthright process to have. All right, so our next account is your engineer. You have your general engineer costs. These are things that you pay your engineer to advise you when you have issues. When there are problems out there, they do their process with that. It was 82,000 this year. You're going to spend 70. We reinstalled it at 85, so I think the world is getting back to normal again. And then we put a 5% escalator every year. You can follow that all the way across. We have a 537 update that was, I guess we spent $3,500 this year. Warren believes we need to do another 5,000 for next year, and then it becomes an every other year process. You have MS4 compliance, we have to do reporting, and you have to make sure that you're doing your compliance. MS4 is your municipally separated storm sewer system. So it's an environmental process that EPA put in place in 1974, and DEP started enforcing in 2001, and it became very serious in 2014, and again, renewal of the permit in 2019, opening up for renewal again in 24, so you've got expenses coming at you on that.
And then you have engineering reimbursement, which are costs you have for the engineering, but it gets reimbursed on your revenue. So now we're into building maintenance, and these are all the various accounts associated with your operations of your municipal building and facilities. I don't know if anybody has questions about that. We're talking about 7 different accounts, over 32,100. The one escalator we have there is utilities, because we see that escalating. After that, it's just the issue of managing these costs as you move forward. And you can adjust the numbers moving forward, but they're basically placeholder numbers. Here's your hydrant rentals, and this is your hydrant reimbursement rentals. So this is where you actually expend the flushing of your hydrants. Then, of course, your money goes back from the subdivision that the water is not dedicated, so they reimburse you for that. And then this is a big number. This is your number that was in your budget for your EMS and for your fire company. It's budgeted 120. Nothing was done this year, so it's rebudgeted 140 for next year. Then it returns standard 25,000 after that. This is the capital contribution based on your NRP money that is. So that's your second number that is estimated to be cut from ARP. Questions about that? You identify what it is. It's your Twin Valley Fire Department, 20,000, and the Honeybrook Borough Fire EMS, or Honeybrook Borough EMS for 120,000. Okay. We have placeholders for 25,000 there. That's a policy decision for the board. What it used to be, this was just a one-time commitment to make these contributions for these two services. So that's where it is. Foreign fire taxes is the converse of what we saw earlier in revenue. Like I said, it's going to be 2,000, it's going to be 43,000. We're estimating 43 is going to be the number. We'll see what happens, and it's an in. You get a check from the state. 30 days later, you can bring it back out to your fire company for that. Or the fire companies, I think you commit money to the Twin Valley fire company. Okay, so now we're down to UCC and code enforcement, and so you budgeted 130, you actually spent 60, you get back at 85 next year to make sure that you have the amount of money to properly do that program. And then you have your zoning permits. This is the cost of your engineer actually reviewing the permits and issuing the permits. I guess you have mobile home inspections, mobile home park inspections, again, consistent number. Warren, refresh my memory, that's one mobile home park, right?
No, we have multiple ones.
Okay, so it adds up to 2,000.
Correct.
That's it, okay. And then, of course, you have to pay the state for your building permits. So this is where you pay the state I think it's $5 per permit that you issue. And that reminds me, we're going to be looking at your permit cost and your permit payments to your inspectors to make sure that the township is made whole for all of the work. Because permit issuance is a user cost, not a general fund cost. We have to make sure that we provide for enough revenue to cover the cost of your actual involvement in private property development, which is what we're building permits are. Everybody understand that?
Next line, item, junkyard inspection. There's nothing in there.
No, because that's rolled into the junkyard fee for the annual fee. The inspection is included in that, correct?
Okay, so now we're into the zoning hearing board. And so we have payroll of $50 a month for somebody on the zoning hearing board. Probably the recording secretary, the payroll taxes you pay on that. Your zoning officer was budgeted at 29, you actually called 24 this year, we put it back to 30. And again, we're escalating it at 5%. for the next 2 years, I guess, next 2 years, and that's an even budget after that, we can look to see what those costs actually are based on the performance of the program. You can have some money in here in case there's something that you want to hire a consultant for planning. I think that's a really good process. May decide you don't need anything for that, but you have money there, and you don't have to sit there and go, well, we have to do that in the budget to do that. You have expenses for your zoning hearing board, for engineering, and you also have your legal costs for zoning hearing board. You had $13,000 budgeted for expenses, and you had $25,000 actual cost. So we felt it was better to put $25,000 in there, get through the placeholder. Again, you can look at that next year, you got the year after, you can say, okay, zoning hearing board isn't that expensive. Chances are, given your community, zoning hearing board is going to be more expensive, but you have a placeholder there for $25,000. So, but of course, it's based on higher 13 cases. Animal control, so what are you paying? I guess it's Chester County.
It's the SBCA of Chester County.
Yep. So that's your cost for that service. And that means you can get your feral cats and rabbit dogs taken care of. This is the cost of your refuse collection for your public works process. So again, we just kind of set that placeholder in there, we can whatever as it goes. I still think it's a fairly fixed rate. So we have your public works director in there, and then we have your payroll for your public works department. So we want to make sure that between now and the end of the year, just like with your administrative staff, that we work out what that process is going to be, and then we actually decide what is correctly. And I think that part of the budget adoption would be a resolution that establishes the pay rates for the various employees, so you know exactly what you're doing there. And of course, you can see the percentage increases that we have in that process. That is a place that you can tell me, okay, we need 6%, 2%, 5%, whatever. Just give me the placeholder numbers so we can make sure that your budget supports that work. Again, all the payroll taxes, payroll costs. Uniform allowance, that's what you give your public works guys. I don't know what kind of estimate where you are. When we put $2,400 in here, I think it's actually going to float back down $1,500 number. The state is really trying to recoup all the other $200 they pay as a result of it. That's why it's going on. We have an allocation for workers' comp, an allocation for health insurance. We're estimating 10% increases. As we start moving forward, we can play with that number and see where it actually needs to be. But it's supposed to make sure that your budget has the numbers necessary. This is a pension for the public works process. This is contributions you make for their pension and disability insurance and life insurance. That's part of their whole payroll benefit program. Questions? Okay, this is your public works department operations. Not a lot of money, a lot of accounts. Basically, just trying to put placeholders forward. Here we are. Budget 20 this year, you're at 22. We moved to 24 next year, so we think diesel fuel is going to be expensive. We can watch that and see whether we bring that down. But that's, that is an issue. Your heating, and all these other associations are actually public works departments. So now you have your snow and ice removal. So this, I believe, is just subdivided some. And the budget 20 or 15. I would keep it at 20, but just so you know, this could be 40%. It all depends on the weather we have. But it's a placeholder of $20,000 and get at it and project it. The traffic control supplies, the traffic control services, these are your traffic lights and your signs. I remember that, we have a whole lot of that, we have some. So there's money in there to make sure we get placeholders to get that. We budgeted 1,000 for traffic control supplies, that up to 1,000 back. Budgeted 500, spent 400, 500 back. So that's over there. This is an area that could really whack it as you go forward here. So I want to be really careful about when we do a stormwater project, because it's not as forward. We talked about where we were on the revenue side. You budgeted 250, you actually spent 50. We have 200 back in for next year, and that could slide this way if you don't have to do a stormwater project. We want to make sure that the Public Works Department has $50,000 to maintain your storm drains, because that's critical. You lose a storm drain, you can lose the entire road signal. So you want to make sure you have money there to handle that. All right, repairs, tools, and equipment. You had a budget of 32, you spent 31. We restored 33 for that, those line items. So that is repairs for your tools and equipment, and repairs by outside services. So that's when you give your piece of equipment to somebody outside to repair. Not your Public Works guys doing that repair. And then we have supplies for maintenance. This is $30,000 that we can buy for things that maintain your roads and bridges. We have other charges and services for $5,500. This is the big number that has never shown up in your budget, and that is a general fund commitment to maintain your roads. And you'll see later in this budget that you have a lot of miles of roads, and if you don't start allocating serious money to that, your roads are going to be falling apart in 2040. And so this is $100,000. This could be 150, 200,000. But Warren and I did the analysis of your roads, and the cost to maintain your roads, 100,000 here, and then your liquid fuels allocation. And you have basically taken your road, and you are maintaining your 15-year roads, because they're high volume, every 15 years, and you're maintaining your 25-year roads, which are basically your residential streets, every 25 years. And you have a 100% rebuilt road network 25 years from now. This is serious, and this is something that you want to talk to your residents about. Because, you know, people look at roads and go, wow, they look really good right now. We're relatively new subdivisions, all good. But at 15 years, they start looking bad, and you don't have money built in your budget. So this is in your budget, and it's a huge commitment to making sure that your taxes in your township stay stable year after year after year. So I want to highlight that. I think it's just something that you guys need to talk to your residents about, because it's a huge forward. And you have the ability in your budget to make that kind of commitment. So now you're renting a certain amount of money, you're renting a certain amount of equipment every year to maintain your roads. You have the budget account in there to handle that process. So you have $40,000 in rent equipment. I guess you have some commitment to the cemetery that we have to take care of. So there's money in the budget to take care of that. Warren has said that you have this budget this year, and your budget you had it years past, you have used it. We think it out. This is a policy decision by the board. If he wants to build this back in again, we can do that. But right now, it's just not being utilized. So we haven't put, we've told him but
At this point, Warren,
it's not being utilized. So no reason to build money into it that you say for it.
we just discussed.
Well,
Yeah, 1 second, Paul.
Is it possible to
Take a break here.
take a break from the budget and go back to the regular business meeting and then come back and finish this, or is that?
I'm just thinking that we have some people here that we gotta get through, and,
The next few budgets, once we get through this, are pretty quick.
Right.
They're pretty much money in, money out.
just to further bring us up, there's some people who came in.
Paul, how much more time do you think you need to get through the budget?
I'll accelerate this discussion.
Okay.
I'll just highlight the differences, the issues that need to be handled. So here's another contribution that is an ARP.
Yeah, excuse me, Paul, just for 1 second, I would like to focus on, so rather than rush through, but just a courtesy to our audience, just to, because this is carrying on a little longer than it's already 8 o'clock. So we want to make sure some people have.
Do you have time to take a pause, Paul?
When do you need me back?
It was 30 minutes.
Okay,
Okay.
So it is 8:04, I'll be back on at 8:35.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, so we're gonna take a break from the budget. We'll come back and finish it up with Paul in a half hour. So we're gonna move and skip to number 4 on the new business.
Number 3?
Well, number 3.
Oh, I'm sorry, number 4 is the library, yeah.
Yep.
Great, so number 4 is the appointment of Nancy Johnson.
I'll make the motion to approve the appointment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is waivers for the Keystone Court Mobile Home Community preliminary plan as outlined in JMR Engineering letter dated October 27th, 2022, with the exception of sections 22-629.3 and 22-629.5.a, which will be addressed at the time of final plan submission.
And Laura, at this point, if you don't mind, I'll interject. We have some folks here from Keystone Court, so what I'd ask them to do maybe is introduce yourselves and to the board, give a summary of the project, and then items number 5 and 6 are actually related. So there are waivers initially, and then conditional recommendation on the preliminary plan. So I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Oh, sorry, I'm a little short here. So, I'm Allison Zaro. I represent the applicant. With me this evening is Bobby Benedicts. He is the owner of Keystone Courts Mobile Home Park, and Jack Robinson, our civil engineer. This project is an expansion of the existing mobile home park, which is located at 2140 Horseshoe Pike. Today, there are currently 47 units on the property, and this is in your mobile home park overlay. So Mr. Benedicts is proposing to expand the park by 36 additional units. These 36 additional units, and the one thing that's a little unique about this park is that the old park, which was developed under older zoning, is not individually lotted out, and that will stay the way it is, but the new lots will be lotted out lots in conformance with your current ordinance. In 2021, we did receive one variance for setbacks for a handful of the units, which abut another existing mobile home park in your township, just to allow for some variation in how those units would be set. The project otherwise conforms to zoning. As Mr. Reinert mentioned, there are several waivers that were requested, and I will note that the Planning Commission did recommend approval at its meeting on the 27th and submitted, I believe, perhaps you've seen that letter. So we're happy to answer questions or however you'd like to handle it.
Perfect. And just for the board's sake, there should be a letter in your packet of October 28 that reflects the recommendations of the Planning Commission related to those waivers. Primarily, they are for the design of the street system. It is a private street system because it is a mobile home park. So a lot of the geometry and grades and things like that are called out as recommendations in that review. In addition, there's also waivers for sidewalks in order to provide a paved trail in lieu of sidewalks for the development. There's also a waiver of curbing of new streets unless required by PennDOT on 322. There's also a waiver related to not requiring a tennis court based on that there's other recreational facilities proposed. And then there's also the final waiver would be the solid waste collection station would be individual pickup similar to what they use currently for the existing mobile home park. So those are the waivers that were recommended by the Planning Commission. Do you have any questions either for myself or the applicant?
So this is a condition of preliminary plan approval.
That'll be the second action, John, after the waivers. But yeah, that will be forthcoming after the action on the waivers. And the landscaping, you already agreed that, Allison, to defer that to the final plan. I guess you're going to work some details out
Yes.
and come back in with those items at a later date.
Yes, that's acceptable to the applicant.
Okay.
Didn't Keystone Court have something with their recreation center or something? How did that work out?
The community building, I believe?
Yeah, the community building.
Yeah, now Allison, maybe you want to, I think you were using an existing existing building within the development?
We were, and I believe ultimately, and I was not at the planning commission meeting, so Mr. Robinson can confirm, but I believe the planning commission ultimately recommended utilizing the existing building. However, in terms of additional recreational facilities, there are 2 top-ups and a half basketball court that would be provided, along with a walking trail that loops around the entirety of the community.
Okay.
And there's a separate maintenance shed, so that's a separate building as well.
I'll make a motion to grant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then the second item is the conditional preliminary plan.
Right, that is a recommendation also from the planning commission, conditional preliminary plan approval based on compliance with our October 24 review letter, which contains a number of items that will be addressed and will carry over to the final plan. We'll also check that at the time of final plan submission. So they'll be coming back in for a separate approval for final plan. Any questions related to that?
No. So I'll make a motion to grant.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, and I want to also thank you for allowing us to jump ahead part of the budget presentation.
Those numbers are kind of tough to follow. For a while.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is Maple Inn Estates. Waivers outlined in the Howell Engineering letter dated October 27th, 2022, contingent upon DEP's acceptance of the design of the National Pollutant Discharge and Elimination System permit.
And again, there's a representative here for Maple Inn. I'll turn it over to this gentleman right here.
Good evening, Justin Brewer with Howell Engineering, here on behalf of the applicant for the Maple Inn Estates project. We were here last year, received the preliminary plan approval, and we are now back for final plan approval. Just a refresher on the project and any new members of the board. The property is located at the existing Maple Inn restaurant and bar on 322. We're proposing 24 townhomes. We received a special exception for the multifamily use in January of 2021. Where the current site, the parking lot is just a complete paved access out to 322. So as part of this, we're going to have a single driveway. I have a plan for anybody that wanted to take a look. Single access on the 322, looping around, units lining that driveway access in. As I said, 24 units, 24 by 45 foot units. Stormwater facility is going to be 2 rain gardens and a fire retention basin. We also have 2 waivers that we're requesting. I don't know, Mike, did you want me to get into those, or were you going to go through that?
I'll actually summarize this
Okay.
for Justin, and if
Okay.
they have questions, we can
Okay.
go back to you if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So just ask me to turn that around, so.
Oh, sure, certainly.
And Justin, just real quick, the ownership of the drive that goes in, is that going to be HOA?
Yes,
owned?
yes,
Okay.
HOA,
Okay. Owned.
And Burdell Road is just right down there.
Yes, yes.
And where's the existing?
Right here. An existing single-family home. Correct, yes, yes.
And just for the board's information, the 2 waiver requests are for stormwater requirements in our existing stormwater ordinance. One of which is the location of rain garden being within 25 feet of the one unit that has a basement in it. They do have an impervious liner that they're proposing, which is a typical offset to being that close to where the unit's located. And then the other one is the pipe inverts into the basin in the forebay. Don't comply with our requirement for a 6-inch separation distance from where the outlet of the discharge pipe is in the bottom of the facility. We have no objection to either of those waivers, provided DEP is also in concurrence with that as part of their NPDES requirements. So they do have to get an NPDES permit for the project. So as long as they're okay with it, we could grant approval of those waivers with that condition that it's also acceptable with DEP as part of their review.
How's a rainwater garden different from the storm retention basin?
actual adjusting you want to
The
explain?
rain garden is going to be more, it's a more shallow basin. It's more plantings in it. And more, it's more of an amended soil in the bottom of the basin to manage the stormwater. There's some shallow limiting zones, we call them in the stormwater world, preventing us from having a deeper basin. So we have to bring them up so they're not in the 9 feet and a larger footprint than what you typically see.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make the motion. That's a grant.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's the waivers.
Those are the waivers. And then the second item would be for conditional final plan approval. Again, based on our October 18th review letter, which has a number of comments. And Justin, do you have any objections to
No
that?
objection here, we'll be on this.
So they'll be addressing those comments then with your conditional approval.
So who works on the motion?
Yeah, I'll make the second motion for final plan.
Conditional final.
Sorry.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Okay, thanks, Justin.
Thank you. The next item is an extension of time for the Westbrook IT LLC. This is the subdivision number 2021-3. Is that the
Yeah, this is an ongoing subdivision plan, Laura, that we've had for several months, if not years, in the making. They need additional time to address PennDOT comments and also possible lot reconfiguration of the project. So that's what the request is from the applicant for the additional time.
Okay.
We made a motion for an extension.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is Resolution 2022-17, authorizing the manager to manage the township credit card account and adopting the credit card purchasing policy.
So the information you have in your packet, and we talked about this at the workshop, currently there's 2 credit cards issued to the Public Works Director and myself. They're both attached to our personal lines of credit. I'm requesting that the board move to a corporate card account system where each employee within the township would have their own credit card, which would have a set limit. It would be tracked internally, which is best practice. It's not attached to their personal credit. The limits that, again, the board can elect to set, but would be for general employees over at the township public works side, $400 a month to allow them to go purchase small items that might happen to have a point of sale that we don't have credit accounts with. Currently, the 2 cards are $20,000 limit between the public works director and the manager. So I would ask that the public works director his limit be $5,000, mine would be $10,000. And this best practice for financial reasons is paying when you can with a credit card, because the credit card company that I'm letting go through is Slated Who Your Investment. We offer a 1% return on credit card purchases. So obviously, the more that we spend, the more money that we save. The credit card policy would still be in effect, kind of similar to as it is that we wouldn't pay any of those bills until the treasurer's report would be approved in a board meeting. Then with approval, the treasurer at my direction would try to pay most of those bills with credit cards should they be. So you'd already approved the payments of the bills, but instead of signing a check, you would be signing off on those invoices, and that would permit the treasurer to pay after you approve. So you'd still be approving the bills before we pay them.
But that would actually save some time
What?
too, in the whole process of getting all of this.
Bills paid. And again, if the board is fine with, typically we have some RSAs already of electricity, phone bills, something like that, we could continue that policy with no continued things. The only thing that you would need to do is, for the ordinance, is set what would be called $1,000 payment, right? And if we wanted to pay with that credit card, if you set the limit to $5,000, then we would be able to pay it up front, but if not, we would then do the normal invoicing, and then, or I would reach out to the board and get approval, saying this is why we need to make this purchase, and upon the approval of the board, make that purchase just as an emergency. But if it's line items pre-approved, and we know we're paying it, we know that we can pay with a credit card. So I would ask that you pass it, and then just tell me what limit you would like written into the resolution that would say, no employee, including department head, shall make any individual purchase with a credit card in excess of whatever you'd like to say, unless previously approved by the board of supervisors of the public meeting. And I don't know if you'd like some recommendations, if that has some insight.
I mean, I'll almost turn to you, you know what the expenditures are and those things. But I mean, it becomes sort of the board's threshold of what you're comfortable with, you know, Warren sort of guiding expenditure on, you know, emergency basis.
So typically, anything over $5,000, if it's not pre-approved, and again, even if it's $5,000, I notify you unless it's something that we already know we're purchasing. So I would say an emergency purchase, and again, best practice is that any purchase that is not budgeted for, the board is at least being aware of, if not, getting the buy-in is best practice. So I'd say set the limit at $5,000, and then again, we can always amend the resolution.
That's good.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
I do have a question as far as establishing credit card accounts. This is not in line with this, but at some point would the township be in a position to accept credit card payments for, for residents?
Absolutely. So the company that we looked at to build our website offers credit card merchant processing. So if the board was interested, and I think it's best practice that they would be able to build in a merchant transaction section right into the website, so it would be integrated, so someone would be able to apply for a permit, make a payment, the staff would be able to take it at the desk, and also if someone wished to make a payment through the website. they'd be able to do
Online
that as well.
transactions.
And again, best practice would be, as municipalities, we can actually offset the price of the transaction back to.
Fees.
Yeah, so,
Fees on the-
yeah, so we're permitted by law. to charge
Convenience
a
for the resident, they'll pay a little.
transaction fee. So, yeah, we're looking at that with the revenue developers.
Okay.
So yes, we can do that.
Okay, next item is final release of funds for Ephraim Stolfus, Grand Use Circle, tax parcel number 22-8-7.4, the amount of $1,037.03 for the completion of stormwater control.
And this is just an individual project for house and barn driveway, in the station area.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is a partial release of funds in the amount of $35,977.32 for Village Green Phase 3, tax parcel 22-8-86.
And this is, for the board's knowledge, this is for the final wearing course of the road system in that development that was inspected several weeks ago. So that is what the release entails, the entire final wearing course for that project.
Is there a concern about that surface being damaged by some additional work?
Is there a concern? Obviously, it's something we will have to monitor, John. The developer was put on notice about the basin conversion prior to the wearing course going down, and then just noting if there is any damage to this witness as a part of the additional tasks that are necessary, they'll have to repair that at that point.
So in other words, the cost doesn't get passed on to the homeowners?
Yeah, the developer was made aware of that before he proceeded. Yeah.
Got a question?
Are you holding money for that? Because he's not gonna do it, he'll walk. So is there any extra money left for the damage? Because he's going to damage it.
There's a maintenance security, Melissa, and that's part of the agreement that we have for phase 3. Beth is aware of that agreement, so we do have the ability for phase 3 to withhold those funds if there is damage. The other note I just wanted to make is we are doing the annual increase with this escrow, so that will be increased with this, and there is $97,153 left in the account for phase 3. There's also funds for phases 2 and 1 that are already being withheld. I don't have those amounts in front of me tonight, but just so the board's aware that there is an increase that was imposed because of another year transpiring since the project was initiated.
There's a potential of a couple $100,000 in this group. That's the kind of range, because we're releasing 35,000 here.
You're releasing 35, but you're increasing it by 8 with the increase. So there's, like I said, the total remaining after the release would be $97,153.93
For phase 3.
for phase 3. Yes.
And then there's additional.
And there's additional escrow for the other phases.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just the concerns that I've heard over the last few years. Is there a deadline to approve this, or what's the status on this one?
There's a time frame from which the township has to act upon the request from the developer. I don't know when that request came in.
I believe it was dated earlier this month.
It came in pretty much
October
right after the last.
I'm sorry, it's November.
Yeah,
October
it came in,
Right
after the
meeting
last
was.
board meeting, so it was, I think, the week after. So I believe it's.
I think your
60
salary
days.
I
requires
don't have my
45.
MPC in front of me.
I think it's 60 days to act on the request.
Is there a concern from the board related to the request? I mean, I'm
Just the past history of this.
of the work that was actually done, John, or the potential of what might
The
happen
potential
down the
right
road?
after the history of this the site that every time we release money, well, not every time, a few times we release money and then we find that something came up. And, I think the residents have been patient with through all these phases and stuff, but I just don't want to see the homeowners in a position where they have the assurance, but then the homeowners association take a hit.
I mean, I'll just chime in that our obligation is to ensure that they're installed correctly.
Yeah.
And that's what, Mike and Technicon have done.
What's the time frame on the basin being converted now that just about everything else is done?
It's a fair question. So, just to kind of follow that.
Yeah.
As long as the developer does the work and it's inspected and it's done properly, we don't have any real authority. We have an obligation to release funds if they request it, after it's inspected and deemed satisfactory.
Yeah.
We do have the ability to require maintenance security and to require the developer to maintain those facilities for 18 months. Where it's private facilities like this, potentially we wouldn't, but by contract in the improvements agreement, we have required, and when it comes to maintain for that 18 months, after completion of all of the improvements. So 18 months from after the basin's converted and everything is done on this project, we still have them on the hook to do things, and we will have money in our pocket as a percentage of the total improvements of that phase as sort of a financial guarantee. So there will be other money that he has to put up that kind of take the place of this security that's being released, that we have to release at this point.
But what is the timeline for him converting the basin? Because there's supposed to be a pump that is installed, and that can't be installed. I mean, it's just ongoing.
Yeah, we know that, Melissa. I mean, I've asked for schedule updates from the developer. Warren's fully aware of those requests that we've made. He's given me deadlines. He's not met deadlines. He has met with other deadlines. My obligation is obviously to uphold security until he's done the improvements. So at this point, we're still holding money for the basin conversion. We're still holding money for the pumps. Everything that has not been completed, we still have financial security for. So it's up to the board and the township as far as whether or not we have the legal means to actually declare default, or we continue to wait and we file the MPC with the financial security that we have.
And if-
Those are the things I'm bound by the MPC.
Yeah,
so
and
that's-
declaring default would mean essentially we would do the work ourselves, you know, all of a sudden become the hirers of contractors to do this type of work, and then we claim the funds that are in security to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something that I typically don't recommend municipalities get involved in unless it is dire to some extent, because it's not, you know, we're not in the development business,
I understand.
so.
Just, and I'm just,
But the
It's
pumps,
not-
the
it's not
pump,
our-
the pumps were
it's not-
supposed to be installed when phase 2 was done. Phase 2's done. They
Phase
haven't-
two's not done.
What's not done in phase 2? Phase 2's
We
done.
still have security in phase 2. I don't have that with me tonight.
Phase
We're
2
only
done.
acting on phase.
The
like I
house is
said,
made,
we're-
but
we're
the
still-
improvements are not.
We're still
entirely done.
withholding improvements security for phase 1 and 2. And 3.
Well, I don't know what improvements would need to be done in phase 2 because they're done.
Well, I think you just said the pump.
That,
Among
that's
others.
supposed to be installed.
And we're still holding money. Melissa. I mean, we could go back and forth on this issue. I mean,
I was just.
like I said, they're not completed in either phases 1 through 3 because we're withholding money at this point.
It's just at this point, Village Green was supposed to have been dedicated and all that 6 months ago, or maybe whatever the timeline, and it just keeps coming back, you know, so, and I'm not putting the onus on you, I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, there's
this
only so
project
much we
is-
can do
Yeah.
from our standpoint legally. And we've discussed this internally with staff, and we're held by what the MPC allows us to do.
Yeah, it's just the homeowners at the end of the day, you know, it's their home.
I understand.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Don't disagree with that.
Okay. I guess we have a motion.
But it sounds like we don't have any other things. to
Recourse.
do. So I'll make a motion to approve the partial release.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next item is a partial release of funds for Chestnut Ridge Stage 1, Chestnut Tree and Greason Roads, tax parcel 22-8-52.3, the amount of $18,883.20 for site improvements.
And this, just for the board's knowledge, this is for ENS controls and also the conversion of the basin. You've seen that along Greason Road. So that's what this release entails for phase 1.
This is the same developer as we just discussed a moment ago.
It is, yes.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next is a partial release of funds for Chestnut Ridge Stages 2 and 3, Chestnut Tree and Greason Road, tax parcels 22-8-52.5 and 22-8-52.4 respectively, in the amount of $377,479.10 for site improvements.
And also for the board's knowledge, this is also for a number of ENS items, installation of storm sewer, installation of a tot lot, and also completion of an infiltration basin in phase 2. Just so that you're aware, we are withholding $6,075 of the request. There is a level spreader that has not been installed yet that they were requesting release on, so we're going to withhold that until that's completed. And foresee that happening in the next few weeks here. But just so you are aware of that.
I'll make the motion to release that.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is trail easement agreement with Mobile Roadway 3 LLC for the Struble Ridge Development, 2222 Horseshoe Pike, tax parcel number 22-8-75-80.
I can give just a brief context on this. This is the Mobile Realty Mobile Home Park project. That project towards the south end of it has old rail bed that goes through the property, and through the planning process, it was identified that that was title to that old rail bed was in question. They said they owned it, the county's tax records showed the county as owning it. we went through a whole legal back and forth. At the end of the day, the county agreed to quit claim any rights that they may have had. I don't really think they had any to begin with, but that's a separate issue. But to clean up the record, so it was very clear that, you know, the developer does own all of the land that's part of their development. And as part of that agreement, we did have them grant, and the developer granted an easement back to both the county and the township for potential trail construction through that rail bed, for if and when the Icedale Trail project should come to fruition. So this is the long-awaited easement agreement executed by the county and the developer, and just for our final approval. Okay.
Okay, I'll make the motion to authorize the judgment agreement.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're at a point where we're gonna go back to the budget now.
Yep, we'll just get Paul back on the line.
Can I just ask one question about the budget?
Yes, ma'am.
If you have $1,300 for cemetery and things, who do I go after to have my parents' stone replaced and fixed because they don't know how to mow or take care of it? They knock it off the little pad, there's dents and stuff from that hitting the tombstone. You know, who do I go after to have them replace that?
That is where the ownership of the cemetery is part of the county. Maintenance on it.
The history of this is long and storied. Basically, the church that owned the cemetery is no longer in existence. It was a sister church to the Methodist church in the center of town.
Yeah.
They gave the township a maintenance fund, which in 1950, whatever, you know, $1,000 seemed like a lot, but here we are, and nobody else has come forward to claim or purchase. Again, this is a situation of the owners are no longer around, and so unless somebody steps up and says, hey, I want to buy this cemetery, the township, as a courtesy to the neighbors, have been mowing it for all these years. So,
This is one in Cambridge, right?
yes, it's the one in Cambridge Village, yeah. It's the, it's called the Union Cemetery, which means it had Methodist ties. It has nothing to do with Civil War.
Is that the location you're talking about?
I'm talking about, I think it's the Presbyterian Methodist. In the front, it has labs on stone, labs funeral home. It's between two back roads. I don't know. I think it's either the Methodist or the Protestant. I think it's the Methodist. But I mean, it's not.
So that's not the one we maintain?
That's not the one we're talking about.
No, we don't
That's the
maintain
one,
that.
you would go and speak to the Cemetery Association for that church about that.
Okay, and after I've done that 10 times, and it's not just my parents' stone that got destroyed, it's other people's as well. And I went that route. What other route can I go?
I would ask the Borough Council, because those cemeteries are located in the borough.
Okay.
All right, Paul, we're ready for you.
Just as a side note, in my career, I've had a couple of times when this has happened, and really what happens in Pennsylvania, it's really a problem, is where the cemetery is located, it falls to the municipality to take care of it. And so that's one of the hidden, unfunded mandates that Pennsylvania has. So it's a bad deal. Anyway, all right, so we were at Parks Maintenance, and I guess we're now at the library contribution. And, you know, this is another one of those ARP commitments we've made. And so that really skews the budget for this year coming up, but that's where it is, and it's part of your budget, so you're all set there. We have your debt schedule and your debt interest. Warren and I have to move this forward because you see this 180, 74, 180, 74, 185. Basically what happens is you have a level principal interest payment of around $155,000. We have to make these numbers correct. But the placeholders here, 255 right now.
So that's an accurate placeholder. Your interest will go down, your principal will go up, and then you'll retire your debt, whatever the retirement date is. So that's fine. Pension plan administration, you can see that's pay a fee to somebody to make sure that your non-uniform pension plan is administered correctly, and so you're budgeted there for that. And then we have an insurance program that the budget of 43 came in at 41, and so what we've done is we've taken that and increased that 2% every year, and we'll monitor that to make sure that we have that process set correctly as you report in 24 and 5%. These are your transfers from the general fund to your various specialty funds. So you have a capital reserve fund, CRF, which is the transfer to the CRF to manage your capital projects. You've adjusted that to 104,000, get the capital reserve, you see $104,000 every year for capital general fund to fund that. And then there are transfer to capital reserve fund for other projects for 60,000, and then transfer to recreation fund. So basically what happens is you transfer 224.5 every year, these other accounts which we're going to look at in a minute, but that's what we do with the general fund. So next year, this year you're going to end the year with a year-end of 557. Next year you're going to have $260,000 deficit, then you can see what happens after that. And that's based on a $2.3 million budget, $2.4 million budget. And I think the reality is you're going to see next year, this is not going to be 260, it's probably going to be about 100, and then you're going to see these are going to be really significant positive, which will allow you to make additional decisions with the budget. So now we go to the fire protection fund, and a small balance going in. You can see that it grows as we go on. It grows by $20,000 a year. But what we have is $208,000 of revenue coming in, and then your expenses are $194, and they accelerate. We'll look at each of those expenses. But a big part of this is making sure that you have the money necessary
To provide the fire services, your residents, that they need to expect. At this point in time,
I've had long discussions with the board about this. The nature of fire protection in Pennsylvania is very difficult. Volunteer fire companies struggle. And so one of my concerns is that while you are looking at a balanced budget growing up to $143,000, you may want to look at doing a graduated increase in your fire tax so that at the point that you have an issue where you can actually turn out a bona fide fire company response, you have money there that you can then decide if you're just going to respond to. Volunteer firemen in Pennsylvania in 1970 were about 350,000 people. Today they're 50,000 people. So the ability to actually turn out a volunteer fire company is more and more in question. And I know that you believe that your residents need to be able to react to this and understand that they're going to get a fire company. I think that maybe you want to look at where your fire protection fund tax is and see whether you want to build additional revenues that allow you to react to this, say in 2026 or 2027, being able to make sure that that fire doesn't respond, whether they're standby firemen or you actually are paying people for daytime response, and that's what your problem is. So, I just want to highlight that. This is a fairly easy budget in, budget out, but I will say that we are moving a lot of money into your fire capital. You can see right here, this is, we're moving $80,000 a year in your fire capital. And when you get to your fire capital, you'll see that you're going to have the money necessary to buy the equipment. The problem you have is you probably don't have the money to take care of making sure you've got the people who will respond to that fire station when a call goes off. Then you can save your particular Anybody have any questions about that? Very serious about it. You go from 350,000 volunteers in 1970 to today, all you have to do is Google want to volunteer fire in Pennsylvania, and it'll tell you that it has reduced by 7 to 1. So we're at 50,000 volunteers today versus 350,000 in 1970. So your balance in your fire fund, we're maintaining it at right around, we're actually growing a little bit in there. We're also moving money into your fire account so you can make sure you have money available to buy the right equipment. The problem you have is you don't have enough money here to really start a fire. And you need the paying guys to respond to fire so that you can make sure something else. You don't have enough money in there to do that. But a single firefighter is not a lot different than a cop. So you're looking at probably $180,000 to $200,000 initially per man. And so you need to have 2 guys Monday through Friday. That's the shift that all your fire companies are converting on. So you need to have that kind of money available when you do that in order to make sure that you have a fire response that saves your residents if they actually pull fire on a unit company. Question?
So, you said they volunteer, but, so we're allocating money for pay them, or?
So
This is strictly supporting the volunteer effort and making sure that you as a township have the money, and we'll show you in the fire capital reserve, you have the money necessary to make sure that the fire departments get your share of the cost of their equipment. Your volunteer companies are going crazy when they actually see that you're building for the future so that they don't have to sit there and wonder whether they get a truck in 2030 or a truck in 2035 when the truck is almost ready to fall apart. And so your capital reserve is providing the money necessary to buy those vehicles at the percentage. So you have the Honeybrook Borough part of this, you've got the Twin Valley part of it. But you're putting money away every year to make sure that you have the money necessary. And of course, that means you're also going to be generating additional interest that you're going to be investing in that. But this is only to keep maintaining your volunteer company the way it is. I just know that in Pennsylvania, we're looking at a real issue with 2027, 2028, 2029, where your volunteers are now 55, 60 years old, and you can't count on them to get on that truck every day and respond to the fire from 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock at night. You have an interesting issue, you have a lot of Amish people that will respond to the fires because they're protecting their own properties and their own barns. But they qualify to drive the truck, they make sure that it's there, they have the right guys there. When that happens, that's another story. And so, you can pay standby guys, which is probably a $80,000 annual cost, or you can pay for paid firefighters. I have trained paid firefighters who will probably run you in the range of $150,000 per person to start for one shift, Monday through Friday, which is the shift that everybody is facing problems with. Weekends and nights are not a problem. That's the time you can't get somebody to get out and actually drive the truck to the fire. And that's just happening on a daily basis right now in Pennsylvania. And unfortunately, our legislatures can't make correct about it. They're trying, but we just can't get the political will to do the things that need to be done to handle. The right answer to this is what the rest of this country does instead of in New England, and that is that they have a county-wide fire department. And the fire stations are deployed where the population of the buildings are, and then they respond on a county-wide basis. So that's the right answer. The rest of this country understands that answer because they work part of England, but we created our own government system here. That's the end of my story. EMS is the same way. EMS is a little bit different because EMS survives based on the revenue that they generate by doing ambulance runs. But it's the same story here. And, you know, there may come a time you can't deploy ambulance in the middle of the night. I'll never forget, I was probably 30 years old, and I was the manager of a municipality in Montgomery County, and I needed to go to work early, so I went to work at 4:30 in the morning, working on the budget, and I'm sitting there listening, because the police department was right next to my office, and they called the ambulance company in the area. They couldn't respond, and I was listening to the police department talk about this gentleman who was dying of congestive heart failure. And over a 2-hour period, he ended up dying, and it was because the ambulance was deployed elsewhere. And that's what we're facing. Now, this was 1980, and they're facing it very heavy in Scrooge Valley right now. But you're seeing the same issues. When your residents call for an ambulance, they will want to come, and the only way you can do that is to ensure that you can fund that operation. And you're doing a great thing now by buying the vehicle for your ambulance operation, but your reserves are not great for that area. They want to look at tax for that area and make sure you have the money necessary. Sure that when your residents call for ambulance, everybody shows up. Okay, capital reserve. So you're projecting at the end of this year to have $1 million in the capital reserve. That's right here, $1,003,121. So what we've done is we projected out your fund balances, and so you have some major purchases coming down the road, and that completes your you have a $550,000 expense on fire truck down the road, and that takes your capital reserve to 465, which is a great balance, and you can then start rebuilding it like you did all along here. You had a big purchase. There it is. You have you're actually buying a $200,000 purchase next year, and then a $500,000 purchase in 27. And so as we go down here, you can see transfers in and how it builds the balance, total revenues as you come in, and then we have what's unrestricted, which is when you can buy tools and equipment that are capital reserve, but not actually coming from a specific reserve. And then you have your actual funds coming in from specific funds that are for like public works trucks or fire trucks or whatever. Although I think the fire trucks are there, this is a 10 billion from you looking at the time. So to get in here, you know, again, we have our administrative expenses. We have there's capital reserve, MS4 projects. If you need engineering for an MS4 project, we have that funded here. And then we have your Act 537 plan for next year, which finalizes it so it zeroes it out after that. And then we come down here to building projects. And so what we did for placeholders, we put $20,000 every other year to maintain your capital. And then we put in $50,000 for just capital improvements for your facility. And so that's every other year. And so what we did by doing that is balance up all your expenses so that you have a fairly consistent operation. So here we have a F600 dump body that's being paid for on liquid fuels from the capital reserve, and you have a skid steer that's being replaced next year. And then there's a $490,000 expense that's your grader, which is in 2027. That's the guy that goes down the road and plows, but he also can grade out your stone. So those are big expenses, but they're built into your capital reserve. So you have the money there to handle that. So as we come all the way down, we get to the end, and so in the end, you still have $150,000 of expenses, but your fund balance in the final year of that is still $465,000. See that? So you still have the ability to buy some fairway series equipment. Now you buy a road grader. If you buy a new road grader, it's going to cost you $490,000. If you buy a used road grader, you might get it for $250,000. Or put a placeholder in there to make sure you have the number to replace now we go to the fire capital. This is where you're gonna be looking at paying for future fire companies. So, future fire equipment. So we got on the line, we look at your revenues, we look at your expenses, and you have a $320,000 expense in 2025. And so what that means is that at the end of your this budget process, you still have $161,000 that you're building every year, $80,000, so that you have money for the next piece of fire equipment you need. Warren said this is the only equipment you need right now, and you're paying 50% of that piece of equipment. For Honeybrook, it's there, although it takes down $964, you start rebuilding, so you replace the next piece of equipment fire equipment needs. So you're not caught flat-footed down the road. Everybody understand that part of it? Huge forward plan. Here's your big account, land preservation. So you can see that you're starting this year with $3,800,000 and invested, just figure out what that's worth, almost $4 million. At the end of the 2027 budget, you're at $5,376,000. The really cool part about that is, if a piece of property comes up you really want, man, you have money available, just do it, and you don't have to worry about what it does to your tax base, because you have it available for the purpose that it's intended for, which is to help you to make sure that you preserve land. So, total revenue or total expenses are $876,000, growing a little bit, but it's transfers to the recreation fund and interfund transfers. Also, so total of $872,000. And we have $400,000 as a place for land preservation. And so when you see that in an annual that you do, oh my God, what happens if something comes up $2 million? Well, just step up here, and there is your fund balance. So you can make a decision that that's a piece of property that's important to your township, and you don't want to develop, you want to preserve, and that's what you can do. Questions?
Many of these large easement costs have been paid out over a series of years, usually 5 years. So we haven't made large lump sum payments over several years. But if you're healthy, you can make that adjustment.
Oh my God, you can just say, this piece of property doesn't need to have 400 single-family homes, it doesn't need to have 400 townhomes. We just want to buy it so that we preserve it as open space and then enter into a long-term design issue to see what that park should look like.
Montgomery County has a called farm park, and it's a operating farm that is available to the public. And so you can go in there as a resident and just see how a farm actually operates. It's really a cool thing. They lease the operations to a farm. So you can, as a resident of Montgomery County, go in and see this farm park. It has like 10 miles of trails on it, and they're paved trails. Ride a bike or walk on it. But more importantly, what it's actually how the farm works, and it's a really cool thing for the county. And it's located in West Norton and East Norton Township, and it's just a neat investment in keeping open space. So now we're talking about recreation fund, and this is a new project. So I guess last year, your previous interim manager started this process, and then you budgeted to add to it. And so now we're looking at building this fund so that you can really do a long-term look at what recreation can look like in your township, whether it's parks for tots, whether it's parks for adults, whether it's walking trails, whatever it is, but you can see that you're building the money necessary. That doesn't mean you keep over money, that just means it's there, and that you can make decisions about what your park system, your municipality should look like. You can see that there's $60,000 coming in from the general fund, which is basically your design costs, and then there's a $400,000 transfer for land preservation, and so that means $460,000 coming in. And so you're looking at $501,000 of revenue coming in, and you have to decide how you want to spend it. And so we put a placeholder in there for a park
next year at 300,000 and 300,000 every year thereafter. Again, the policy to see. Do you want to build a park system? Do you want to build an open space system? Do you want to build a combination? But the best part about this budget process is you have the money necessary to do it. And so when we go up here, we look at where your fund balances are. I mean, you can build some really good open space or parks based on this kind of money, and your residents are going to look and expect that. They're going to want to look and say, hey, Brook has the best parks in the county, and you're putting money together to make it the best system, both for open space through your acquisition process and your ability to create passive and active recreation areas. Huge asset for your residents. So our final budget is the liquid fuel budget, and so what's interesting here is you get an annual allocation of $295,000 with a state turn back allocation, which is a state highway that you took back over. They usually prepare them, paint them, so they're 100% brand new. Then they turn back over to you, and you have to take them over. They give you an allocation of funds. So your revenues in liquid fuels for just brands are around $300,000. You can see what's happening to your interest. We're really moving that money out and investing it. And look what happens when you get $1,200 in 24, $1,300, and so on as you go out. So that's free money to do roads. And maybe it's just maintenance of roads. Maybe that's what you do for your tar sale program, so that your roads stay tight. But that's a lot of free money because of interest. Then we come down here, and this is where this gets really a lot of fun. You've already built in your budget $110,000 for your tar seal, your seal coat program. But this is brand new. We're putting in $120,000 out of your liquid fuels account to match up with this $110,000 of seal coating up to $125,000. And if you remember, we put $100,000 in your general fund. So you are now allocating upwards $300,000 to take care of how many miles for?
56.
If you don't make this commitment to maintain your roads, when you hit 2050, your roads are going to fall apart. You make this commitment, and you'll be known as the township that has the best roads in the county, because you'll be maintaining them in the schedule that's required to make your roads, where people pull out on their road in front of their house and go, my God, how does our road stay this good? And then you don't have any issues with your stormwater, you don't have any issues with your roads collapsing because of sinkholes, and you'll be known as one of the best road systems in the county. But now you have the financial ability to do it. And the best part about it is, you look at liquid fuels, you're looking at a balance where it's going from 485 to 476 to 481 to 484. Kind of hits a ring to it. You're having $500,000 available, and if a major problem comes up, you have the money available to have. On top of the fact that you're maintaining your roads aggressively, both your 15-mile residential roads and maybe your 15-year-old residential, your 50-year-old collector roads where your garbage trucks, and your dump trucks, and your all the heavy vehicles used versus your residential streets, which basically see moving trucks and trash trucks, and they last 25 years. So this program funds that kind of maintenance. So the message to your residents is, we have a long-term plan, and our long-term plan says we're going to stay financially solid into the future. And we're not looking at, unless we have a special need, such as for fire or ambulance, we're not looking at a need to raise taxes. Our municipality is going to be able to fund itself based on its existing tax base. That's a huge message. Fund up.
Questions for Paul?
Any recovery?
Very good, Paul.
So from tonight, I want you guys to look through the budget. And if you have questions, like your treasurer asked like 6 questions, and they were valid questions, and I was able to adjust. That's why, John, you saw an adjustment in there. If you see things that are an issue, raise the question. One of my other municipalities, what they do is they take the spreadsheet and when they get the column Q way over here, in red, they ask the question. And then I can look at it and I can talk with Warren and I can adjust it and then I can respond back to the board about what the issue is. But this is a work in progress. So do not hesitate to say, wait a minute, what about this? What about that? You've got the money. You can really work through this process. But I mean, you are moving forward with a municipality that is as financially solid as any municipality in Berkeley County, very fun, Chestertown. It is a solid plan. And you guys need to talk about that. Your residents need to know that you're looking into the future and that you have a solid plan. So many municipalities, 2022, they do a 23 budget. What the hell happens at 23? We're not going to worry about that because we're going to deal with it when it comes. Here, what's that?
So that's what we've been doing for years.
Yeah, well, guess what? You're not doing it anymore because you got a plan that lays it out 5 years. You can even go longer, but I just don't think there's what you want to look at. If you look at doing a 5-year plan, you want to look at this number right here. What is your budget? What is your balance in the budget? Because that's the number that gives you the flexibility to know that at 28, 29, and 30, you're still in good shape. You can make adjustments and you can react to things that you're not just run up against the wall on, that you can do a 1/10 of a mil tax increase or a 1/2 a mil tax increase. You're not looking at a 3 mil tax increase. And so many municipalities look at it and say, we're not raising taxes, and all of a sudden, they have a huge deficit. And I don't mean a fund deficit, I mean, they need to raise taxes because they can't make their budget meet anymore. Well, you're out 5 years and not one of your funds has that issue. You can say that about fire, you can say that about EMS. You might want to look at that and say, hey, maybe we do a 1/10 of a mil for the next 5 mils, for the next 5 years, so that we know that when we get to 2027, and we know that volunteer fire companies are having a real problem in daytime, so many are, we have the money necessary to move in and really make sure that our residents are safe. That's the thing, that's where you are, and that is a very solid place to be. I told Warren, I usually get involved in municipalities that are in big trouble. And this has been a really interesting process to say that we can really design this thing so that you are years down the road and you have made a financial plan that ensures the health of your community for years to go. So people buying a house that are paying a 30-year mortgage, now they're 10 years down the road and they know they got their services secured. I've done pontificating.
All right. I appreciate your time, Paul.
Thank you.
And then I'll share the updated schedule and then you'll get me the advertised documents and we'll post them.
Yeah, and it's been a real pleasure to work with Warren, somebody who was, just moving into municipal management, and he grabbed the financials here. And it just was a pleasure developing this budget through the process with him. So, I hate to say it, you guys made a great decision with your management, and I think that's a great thing. So,
I appreciate the upsell, Paul.
thank you. It is all earned. So thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you as we go through the next few months, and then we'll start looking at 25, 26, and 27.
All right, thanks, Bob.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, very good, thank you.
Okay, so I guess the last thing is to authorize the township manager to publicly advertise the draft 2023 budget for public review and comment.
I'll authorize the township manager to advertise.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Other new business? Anything?
Well, tomorrow night's Cato, Chester County Association, Township Officials, Fall Conference.
Okay. Any old
till 9, and I've been here 12 hours. So,
I'll take care of the checks. You're welcome.
So then we'll move into the open forum time for anybody who would like to make comments on any item, not necessarily on the agenda. Any comments?
Just state your name and that you're a Honeybrook resident, please.
Jennifer D'Arcangelo, and I'm a Honeybrook resident. I was asked to ask a question because Valerie had to leave. At the October 5th workshop, John was supposed to review the EAC ordinance to align with the supervisor's vision. What's the status?
The EAC is still on hold right now.
Okay,
And why?
why?
Well, we're still discussing it.
Okay,
We haven't made a decision yet.
okay. Thanks.
Is there like I mean, I know you guys are still discussing it, but is there like one certain reason over another reason as to why you don't want to do it, as to how you do? Or-
Just for a process, so, yeah. So you just
Okay.
let her finish that.
Also, are there going to be turning lanes at the Maple Inn because it's close to the Burdell Road, and that's the most dangerous intersection in the township? Like the proposed townhomes at the Maple Inn? Is there going to be turning lanes in front of there, or is it too early to ask?
And not, would have to come up with that, right?
Yeah, PennDOT would give them a highway occupancy permit, which we don't have any control over.
That's correct, yeah.
And then, I understand that Cambridge Road was under the township's responsibility years ago, and then PennDOT took it back. Is there any way the township can take back Cambridge Road, because all the other roads that intersect with Cambridge, like Park Road, Mill Road, Walnut Road, they all look better taken care of, and then you go on Cambridge Road, and it's just a mess that PennDOT is never going to get to because it's such a small country road. I'm just wondering if the township can take back that road.
Well, Cambridge Road also has a pretty substantial bridge, which I think would probably cost the township
That's
a significant amount of money to repair, and,
That bridge was just redone, well, yeah, okay.
yeah.
So, I mean, it won't even be taken into consideration, or, I mean, we have a lot of money, you know, going towards roads improvements, so.
And I'm familiar with the process to rededicate a road.
There is a process, there's a turnover process with the state. I mean, if the board wanted to initiate that, you could do so, but as Tracy noted, you are responsible for any and all maintenance, including bridge work. So you would have to bring any and all bridges up to code if you find that there's a deficiency at that point, so.
I'm sure the bridge is up to code because it was just redone in the last.
Well, I don't know
10 years.
that, yeah,
I
I don't
know,
know
but it was
that.
just redone in the last 10 years.
Cambridge Road has a bridge that heavy trucks are not even allowed to cross on the west side of Route 10.
Right.
That's in Honeybrook Township.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
And that was just redone, like,
No, it hasn't been redone.
What they did, I think, is they just
they
lowered the weight.
reinforced it.
Yeah,
It
but-
was falling apart underneath, so they just
yeah.
reinforced it.
Yeah, well, they're repairing anything.
Okay, all right. I was just asking.
There are a lot of pros and cons with it now, so, I mean, if the board wanted to look into something like that, they could do so, but there are pros and cons to doing so.
Would you consider it? I mean,
Well, that could be brought up at the workshop.
Yeah, I don't know if you
Discussion.
be prepared to answer that.
If that's, the board has an interest in pursuing it, it would be brought to a business meeting.
Okay. appreciate that, thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, about the environmental, committee thing. I know you guys are flopping back and forth and all that kind of stuff. There's 12 municipalities around here. I believe 6 of them have this adopted already, and I think the other 6 are looking towards this. And if I'm not mistaken, Warren's wife helped John to come up with a plan to do this environmental,
Good idea.
yeah. You know, and as, you know, the population grows and the environment gets more and more developed, you know, this is something we really, really need. And if it's being held because of certain people, that's names were on the, you know, the party, that can always be changed, you know, who's on there, who's not on there. But, you know,
But to answer what you're saying, I'm sorry, but just
Go ahead.
jump in. There's the Western Chester County COG, and they initiated a work group this year. So 6 of our participating municipalities have formed that work group, and they're already into their 2nd month. So we would have the opportunity to participate in that if we, you know, want to.
and as far as the budget with the land preservation, so we have money to, you know, access to go to people and say, you know, that's trying to sell their stuff, you know, hey, we see that you're trying to sell your land. We have this amount of money, you know, whatever it may be, that we would like to purchase it from you, or,
But right now, it isn't.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, but I thought, my understanding was that the purpose of the land preservation was to purchase the development rights, not to necessarily purchase. And please correct me if I'm wrong.
The township can use that to purchase open space.
Okay.
Typically, the township is the last entity to find out about a sale when
Right.
plans arrive to our
Right.
door. We do not have an active commercial real estate agent that we have under contract to find land. Like I said, typically when plans show up, that's when we typically know that land has been sold, not for sale.
So,
But the money could be used for that.
Purchase, acquisition of.
At the end of the day, you could blow multiple $1 million on one piece of ground to preserve it, whereas those dollars as conservation easements could potentially preserve much bigger tracts of land, but kind of as Paul's saying, you know, in a given moment on a specific piece of ground with knowledge and ability to actually get in and negotiate, it could be used for that purpose.
Different like 440 sometimes.
Well, if you look at the land preservation plan documents, specifies the targeted farms that, you know, we were considering prioritized. It matches up to the county's priority list as well. The county maintains that list, and we're partnered with them on that program. But in this 3rd chapter of that program document explains the step-by-step of how a property goes through that process. And we're not purchasing the property, we're purchasing the development rights. So the owner retains the property, but severs their development rights. So that's the purpose of that program.
right.
How many years is that good for?
Forever.
Oh, forever?
Yeah. The reason we partnered with Chester County is because we have the ability to flip it, you know, like 20 years from now, the board comes in and says, we don't like this, let the farmers come in and purchase, but it's partnered with the county, and the county is like, no, you know, we're making sure that's the part of the county vision, that they want to have something like 35% of Chester County in open space, because it makes it an attractive place to live, not, you know, attract businesses to come here, things like that.
So it's frozen?
It's frozen.
Okay, that's good.
It's part of the deed, so farmer sells his property, you know, and then farmer wants to sell it, we look at the deed and say, no, you can't do that, you can't put any house up there, that's farming.
I think, sorry, Doug, the EAC, let's go back a little bit. I think that people maybe aren't understanding that we have a saldo process, which is subdivision and land development ordinance, okay, which means that when a property gets developed, there has to be, all the different environmental factors are looked at by paid professionals.
Are they paid professionals of the developer, or paid professionals of You know, the county or?
No, that would be me, ma'am. Actually, akin to what Tracy's saying, tomorrow night is a review of the DR order plan. So we just did a zoning review of that plan for compliance with the zoning ordinance, which includes environmental overlay districts. So a major component of my review letter that I've done is akin to the environmental factors on the property. So all of the floodplain, the riparian corridor, wetlands, the pipelines, all of those things are looked at as part of the zoning review, and then the subsequent, as Tracy was saying, subdivision land development review. We already have requirements in place where those environmental pieces are looked at for any new development that comes in the door. So whether that would be Maple Inn that was just here, Keystone, DR Horton, whatever plan that would walk in the door, we still do that.
So the developer would have to, I mean, let me just get this straight. And I'm sorry if I have to ask questions over and over again. I know that was a hot topic of conversation after the workshop on the Board of Supervisors. But don't they have to contact like the two pipelines to get their thing, contact, you know, Frank White, Conservative Victoria to find out about that? Because I've been in contact with the pipelines and they have not gotten anything.
Well, they very well may not have yet. One of the components of my subdivision land development review, as I mentioned, it's going to be performed for December's meeting.
Right.
One of those things that you're going to see in my review letter is what's called outside agency approvals, and that's going to list anything from DEP to the Army Corps of Engineers to the pipeline that goes through there to the I think there's a telecommunications line that goes through there. There's a whole host of outside agencies that have to perform a review, and if there's an issue with it, they will do a review letter and send that to us. We get that, and they have to comply with whatever's in their approval process. Whether that's they got to separate the houses further away, they got to provide additional right-of-way. There's a whole host of things that they could come up with, but they haven't done that at this point. It's still what we call a preliminary plan. So just by its verbiage, it's still preliminary to the point where they haven't gone to that step yet. That doesn't mean they don't have to do it. It's just they may not have gone through that step at this immediate stage. So if that helps.
So a lot of those environmental factors are in fact being checked and looked at by paid professional engineers that do that for a living, rather than, you know, somebody that isn't specialized in that, rather than a group of volunteers.
We would hope volunteers on the committee would have some knowledge of the
Environmental situation.
Well,
You know, there's certain people that
we, for instance, weren't able to reach a quorum for our Parks and Rec committee, right? That's because we don't have enough volunteers for that. You know, I'm saying that most of our committees, we don't have enough volunteers for. And so,
But if people feel passionate about something and they know people that are, like, know about that, and they have those people in place, then that would be a legitimate committee, right?
I think if people that are passionate about environmental concerns in regard to the development would
I'm not
continue
just
to.
saying development, I'm just saying like the one guy that was at one of the meetings, he was with the open land preservation and parks and recs. He seemed to be really interested in the forming of an environmental advisory committee. And it wasn't about the developers, it was just about, you know, the environment in general in the township.
I will say, I mean, that type of role is more what I see EACs do, is kind of
I agree.
education type things, you know, creating awareness, programming, you know, in addition to having Parks and Rec, that kind of thing.
Right.
Because I mean, I think Tracy's right, the township has paid professionals to write and cultivate ordinances that are on the books that have a lot of the environmental factors protections already included in the body of them. And on all municipalities I serve in, I think Honeybrook has really strong environmental protection regulations already on the books that are being administered through those processes.
Like one thing that we talked about tonight, Christy said that the road crew had to go cut down a bunch of ash trees because we have an invasive species, the ash borer, right? So I was talking to someone else whose EAC is going around and giving educational talks about that bug, the ash borer, and what's happening to the ash trees. That's the role that an EAC has taken in another neighboring municipality.
And you could have, I mean, whoever's on that board could, I mean, on that committee could do that type of thing, even land supply studies or, you know, anything.
Sure, right. But I think that that would be helpful if we had an interest in that.
Right, I agree.
I just want one last thing to say, and it's to everyone out there. I will be coming to every meeting. I will be coming to every committee. If I can't be in person, I will be Zooming. And if you have something to say about me, okay, in your little group there, I would prefer it said in front of my face and not behind my back. And that's all I have to say about that. And everybody knows who I'm talking about.
Is there any additional comments during the open forum?
I have a question. You have all these developers coming in here, no problem with that. What about them up front sharing some of the costs of the growth that's going on here that's gonna be a burden to every other taxpayer that's already here? Is there any way that you can ask your state representatives or anything like that? Is there anything we can do to say, hey, have like a growth fee attached to growth coming in here to kind of help with, like he was saying about fire apparatus or building schools or helping with the roads with heavy construction people that are going to be coming on the roads? I don't know if that's possible or not in this state, but I'm sure it's like that in other states. Just like you have the cable fees to the cable people.
Right. So the short answer is there's no magic,
Oh, I know there's no magic solution,
penalty. I mean,
but looking down the
the
road,
additional tax dollars from turning agricultural land into residential is a piece of it for the municipal side. I get that on the school side, that almost is negated. There's things that we can impose, there's recreation.
I'm not saying jam them or anything like that.
But big picture, no, there's not a magic wand. I mean,
No, I'm not asking for one. I'm just asking for a discussion of how about having a state representative say, hey, I mean, they're making millions of dollars coming in here. They should actually give a little bit to you guys for expansion and services. That's all I'm asking.
For instance, some of the easing on roads, things like that, some of that cost to get passed off to developer towards on the road. Improvements.
The road improvements that are required for their specific project are their obligation to complete. But off-site improvements, the township, just kind of general wear and tear,
Right.
there's no ability to impose.
The only way we could, and that's
Is the traffic impact.
Yeah, it would be the traffic impacts fee, which you have to go through. There's an engineering study that is done. I mean, that is something that the township looked at maybe 20 years ago. There is a process for that to come up with that. There's an ordinance that gets adopted, and in which case the developer is assessed what's called an impact fee based on the number of units that are proposed or the frontage. There's all kinds of criteria that are met, but that is one way to, if the township wanted to look into that, they could. There's nothing on the books
Just to kind of
currently.
recoup.
But there's nothing on the books currently, so it wouldn't impact
I was
what's
just
going on
wondering, that's
now,
all.
but down the road it could if
Yeah.
the board chose to go.
Right, but to do that, you have to be able to do a study that says, with proposed development, there could be the need for
Right.
X improvement at this location, and therefore we have the ability to justify taxing this developer X money today because we're going to have to build this, in a realistically projected needs.
Yeah, well,
So-
fire department, even the hospitals, they're even having a tough time now. It's affecting everybody down the road.
Thank you. Anything else? Do I hear a motion to
Adjourn.
adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
See you Saturday.
Yeah, I'll be there with bells on.